right. Okay, here you go. 5.2 for you. Now here the deal is, what I found with all my years that I've been building boards, I started taking what I was doing with surfboards and applying them to paddle boards. And in the time that I've been building paddle boards, I found designs that I actually can bring back to surfboards. And if you notice, very similar to the one that was outside, that was 8 feet long, this one's 5.2. And the neat thing about this is it incorporates everything that I'm doing on my paddle boards on a little bit more of a subtle level, but it's still on a performance level. And what I'm getting from people that are riding the boards is speed, looseness, flotation, everything that I'm trying to get in my paddle boards. And also cool artwork. You know, I like that thing. Traditional Tomoe board is, which is 18 inches wide, 5.2, 5.6, and it's a very straight board. Fast, loose, but it lacks that curving ability, that carving cutback. You kind of got to be more like a, I don't want to say a skateboarder, but you got, your turns don't draw a line, they draw angles. Yeah, and I'm not a surfer like that, and I don't think most people are. Kids can be, and they like it, but you still, I think, lose that fluid motion because of a nice curving rail. And so what I did is I just said, well, let's just try it a little bit wider and see, because planing, which is width, gives you speed, and especially in slow conditions. I mean, it's kind of nice to be able to take a board out, I think, in what looks like a perfect condition, and you don't have to hopping and popping on that front nose to gain some speed. The board literally is going like this. And I made it basically a 4+1, because then it gives you some options, but I believe as a quad it'll probably work pretty well. Yeah, well, that just covers the tail patch when I put the fins in. And I haven't hot coated the bottom. What's kind of neat is with epoxy, what I like is you actually get the laminating coat on, then you hit it roughly to remove all this roughness, and then you just throw a hot coat on, and it almost comes out like a gloss. So you hit it right away with 220 instead of 100 grit, 120, 180, and build it up. So it's almost like you could, I just hot coat the bottom and take a razor blade and it's ready to go. That's what I'm hoping.
Oh,
so,
very cool.
But I don't want people to think I just do surf paddle boards. I do surfboards, and what I've got from my paddle boards, I'm carrying over, because if it works on something that big, it's got to work on something small.
Oh, it sounds amazing.
By cutting, basically, you know how if you have a round rail, it can snap anywhere. It's like angle iron to a degree. You've got to break it twice in order for it to snap. And I haven't had any problems, and I've ridden my boards and my paddle boards into about 12, 14 foot. So, and I've wiped out in that big, so I know they don't break. So.
Even with the smaller, it's not.
No, actually I don't think it would break. It would probably break less because it's so small. There's no chance for it to get that wobbling, snapping ability. Because a board gets to a point, and then if it doesn't go any farther, it won't break. But if it sits there and does this a couple of times, and then it doesn't take much, like breaking a stick, you know. Well, here's the design behind my boards. Okay, the ticket that I have found is, I've got what I call this is the biplane hull. You start out with a semi-displacement hull up here, which allows you to get going with very little effort. With just within a few strokes of paddling, the board gets on a planing surface right here, and then the concave, which flattens out the rocker for speed. The rocker along the rail remains natural. The panels and the chined rails allow for the width in order for you to break the edge and be able to get a tighter turn. Instead of having a flat board, which is always fast in one direction, you've now got the ability for the board to actually turn off its rail and not lose an edge and still gain speed. And the ticket behind the rails is the fact that as a surfer, you don't want to reach up and grab this giant, big, fat rail. So the rail actually feels like a surfboard. It's got probably a 2 3/4, 2.5 inch feel to it, but it's actually 4.5, 4 3/4 inches thick right here. The concave deck, which makes this, I think, kind of the ticket in here, is it lowers your center of gravity, but at the same time, it splits the foam from the center of the board to the outside like a catamaran, which provides stability and, in a sense, the way things I've read, it actually changes the center of buoyancy of the board. Instead of being down the center line, it's now moved to the outside. So when your board does start to tip, it has a tendency to want to self-right itself. So my boards are actually a lot more stable. The only problem that some people have is that they actually have to change their stance from a parallel stance to a surfer stance. But that's the way we should be riding a board anyway. It's like a surfer.